Dear viewers, welcome to a new episode of DocTalk. Today we're gonna address a very specific subject, which is psychological trauma. And we know that psychological trauma isn't limited to personal events or major events or disasters in general. It is caused by a lot of factors, especially in our day-to-day events and accelerated world. And today we have with us a specialist psychologist, Mr. Mohammed Muhanna, who will take us through the stages of psychological trauma, how to rebuild ourselves after the stages or after living and feeling the stages of trauma. So please stay tuned after this short break so we can discuss with Mr. Mohammed psychological trauma and how to heal from it. Welcome back, dear viewers, and we have with us Mr. Mohammed Muhanna, a specialist psychologist. Welcome to DocTalk.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here today, and I appreciate you hosting me. And I hope we can provide a very informative episode that can help people in their journey of healing and give them a better understanding of the effect of traumas and how can we cope with it.
Well, that is a very important subject we need to address because, as you know, we have a lot of stress from everyday events and lifestyles, not to mention that social platforms, they also can cause trauma on some kind of people. So let's talk about psychological trauma in general. What is psychological trauma and what does it do?
Psychological traumas normally refer to an intense event or like an event that happened that having a very big impact on someone's emotion in a very intense way, and that intense emotion lasted for a period of time, and people have a struggle to cope and go back to their normal life. And that's normally happen when something like a car accident or witnessing a crime, or also it can be elaborated to more abusive behavior and people who came from like a very hard upbringing. So sometimes psychological traumas can take a different ways of impact, and I think it's always depend on what's the story of the person, and what is more important is how the person is really feeling about it and how does it really affect him inside. Because we see many people, they grow up but they still have stuff that they didn't they still like suffering from certain trauma inside them, but still they're not able to cope with it.
Okay. My second question is, let's say have two parts. Let's talk about psychological trauma in adulthood, and in childhood.
Yes.
Let's talk about the effect of or the origins, the beginnings, how trauma occur for children and adults, because we all know that they have outcomes, different outcomes.
I think when traumas happen for children, it's becoming children in that period, they are in a very sensitive developmental period. And I think in here, trauma's effect become more crucial because, you know, they are still in the stage of learning and like learning skills and understanding and having a better awareness of life. And if they have a trauma in that period and they're not being looked after, or like they didn't learn how to release it or maybe get some help, this will have, you know, it will live with them for more years. And I think that sometimes can make their life more complex in a way. It can be reflected in their behavior and their way of thinking and their interaction with people. And I think as they go through adulthood, sometimes people, they don't really cope with their trauma until they become adult, and they start to really acknowledge that they had some certain traumas and they really need help to release it, because they start to realize how it's really affecting them on their daily life.
So, Mr. Mohammed, we talked about trauma, and let's talk about its connection or connectivity to other mental, I don't want to say diseases, but it is what it is. They are like mental diseases caused by external factors. But what is the connection between trauma and depression, anxiety?
Yeah, so I think the connection can be reflected on the way maybe people feel about their emotion, because when it's come to adulthood, I sometimes encounter many people that they suffer from traumas that's been accumulated for many years, and as a result, they start to have a very kind of negative mindset, or maybe they feel there's a lot of negative emotion they was not being expressed yet, or there's also a part of them where they feel they just gave up. They don't feel the life
Yes.
as it should be, or like even when you want to offer them help, they feel helpless, or they feel because they gave up on being understood.
Yes.
And I think that's a very, very important part when we talk about traumas, because people sometimes struggle with a lot of problems or emotions, and they didn't have the opportunity to be able to be understood or to release what's inside them. And I think that can be shown as years go on, and that also will be reflected on their behavior. So when you say anxiety, for example, anxiety is a behavior where people feel reluctant or scared or overthinking about something.
Yes.
And that kind of habit comes from like a certain event that happened to them, or the way they've been raised, or something they witnessed, and they still have that vision in their mind, and they're not able to cope with it.
Yes, just like meeting the expectations of parents that put you into constant anxiety.
Yeah, that can be one example. Another example, it can be accumulated negative experience. So a person start to have a certain negative mindset, and that negative mindset came from the feeling of helplessness, or like, you know, giving up, or not able to really fix that kind of thinking style they have, because they've been through a lot of things, and they didn't really had the opportunity to express it or to work on it. And that's why you see many people in adulthood, when I see them in a session and we talk, sometimes we try to go back in the history, what's been happening to them, what they encounter. Is there something they go through and they didn't have an opportunity to talk about, or they feel ashamed, or they feel they might be judged if they say it?
Yes.
And I think that's a very important part to understand people's traumas, because number one, people need a safe a space to talk about it. Two, they need to feel understood so they can really release what's inside them and have their opportunity to express their problem in their own way.
Yes.
And then once you give them that, they maybe have a better acceptance for, you know, exchanging thoughts in a way to develop them as people, and also to make them start the journey of overcoming their traumas.
Okay, we talked about trauma. What are the kinds of trauma? We know that there are people who are living with childhood traumas till the end of time, and there are people who, let's say, last year I had an accident, and until this day, the road that I drive home, in the same spot, I get anxious and I get scared just to go through this part of the road. So is it a long-term or it's a normal trauma? So how can we define it?
I think it's depend on, first, what kind of accident or event happened. Secondly, we always look of the influence of this event on the daily life of a person. And if a person really struggling with his daily life, with his social life, with his job, with his way he interacts with people, with also visiting certain places, and that's been prolonged with him for a long time.
Yes.
And here we acknowledge that there is something happening, and then we need to work on it. And I think the most important thing is we start to first revisit that kind of event again and see how did it happen, give a person an opportunity to release all that negative emotion they have in regard that event. And then we start to really help the person to cope with it, because traumas can occur in a different way of setting and situations. As you said, some people experience car accidents, some people experience abusive behavior, upbringing, some people experience maybe some sort of or witness a murder, or witness a violence event. So that's always will live in their brain. I guess also many people, they've been suppressed emotionally, and because maybe their circle or their surrounding, they didn't give them an opportunity, or they didn't really make a really good atmosphere for them to be expressive or to talk about their inner struggle. And from there you can see the trauma can grow, and people and when we speak also on a motivational level, many people they feel they lack motivation because they have inner struggle. They didn't
Yes.
cope with it before. And I think that's a very important point to really talk about. Sometimes when you see some people, they don't feel motivated, or they feel scared, or they feel reluctant, you try to really revisit what's been happening to them in the past, and try to really help them to release what's inside them, and then you start to move on and help them to cope better.
Mr. Muhammad, I would like to keep talking about trauma and its causes and effects in our daily life, but we need to look into this next report, and then gonna keep talking about trauma and its effect on our daily life. So please stay tuned after this short report. Welcome back, dear viewers, after this short report, and we have with us Mr. Mohammed Muhanna. We keep talking about psychological trauma. So let's talk about personal characteristics. People differ. How do they manage trauma? How do they handle trauma? You are different from me, so I can handle it differently because also I'm a woman, you're a man. There are certain characteristics involved.
Yeah, I think in general, everyone came from a different background, social background. They have a different nature, they have a different sort of upbringing. And I think that's always affect the way they handle things, because even when it's come to trauma, some people can have a very impactful event, but they cope with it very positively in a short period. On the other hand, some people might have an event might not be that strong, but they still struggling to cope with it. And here I think it's very important to be aware of the different of personal characteristics between people, because some people have a different mindset and different resilience. And in here also that's play a very crucial part in how people can handle traumas, because at the end, as humans, we're all different with different stories. So I think that's very important to be aware of.
Okay, let's talk about coping. Give me some guidelines to cope with my trauma. Let's say, God forbid, I witnessed a dear person loss, and that person is extremely dear to me. I need to cope with drama, so life goes on.
Okay, since you mentioned that the losing of someone, I just want to keep it more general, because I think that's more specific. I think what's for me very important to help someone to cope with traumas is first to give them an opportunity for an emotional release, and also encourage them to talk without feeling they'll be judged, or they're going to be ashamed, or they're going to have any certain reaction. Because what's very important to me to help someone to cope with their traumas is first they release all that kind of intense emotion inside them. In some situation, maybe they have to, cry, scream, show all that intense emotion first. And then after that, we start to discuss what's happening. And also we try to help the person to cope with it, because I guess that's a very crucial part in how people communicate about their traumas. Sometimes you might have a good friend, close friend, they were willing to listen to you, but they don't have the quality of active listening, or how to respond, or how to really.
Sometimes they let's say neglected, or let's say move on.
Yeah, or they just want to tell you, yeah, you'll be fine. No, you are good. No, but I understand they might have a good intention, but for someone with traumas, they don't need that. They need more dive into their inner struggle and helping them to release it. And that's a very crucial and a very important skill for any psychologist to communicate about person trauma, because it's a very, very sensitive topic, and it can really have a lot of side effect, or it can be so crucial for someone's development. Because I see many people, they really stuck at certain level of their life just because of this accumulated traumas, never had an opportunity to really release it, even though they might visit a specialist. But still, I always believe what is a very important thing in mental health or in life in general is communication. And to be a very good communicator, you need to have a very high emotional intelligence in a way that you really understand the person in front of you, and know how to approach him according to his nature and personality.
Well, that's interesting. We're going to move to another certain kind of affecting things that affect trauma or trigger trauma. Let's talk about stress. Let's talk about work stress.
Okay.
Because work stress can lead also to trauma. let's say, or say? How can you explain that?
Well, stress is part of our life.
Mhm.
I know that stress can be anywhere, can be in
Yes.
house, can be in work, can be whatever. But since you mentioned work, I I understand sometimes work can be very stressful because it's mainly about work.
Yeah.
You know, work is only about work.
Yeah, I said work stress because I know stress is in general.
Yeah.
I want something specific. Let's say work stress because we are all working. So
Yeah, we're all working. We all have like certain stress at work. I guess what is very important is sometimes I see people, they have a work stress because they've been always trying to be the better person, or they try to be the someone who's more
the bigger person.
the bigger person. They just try to, you know, take someone like do someone else's job, or they just, because I think this is a very big problem when someone is very responsible, they, even if there's someone who's lazy, they feel like annoyed, but they still want to do that job to make sure the work go very well. And I think that's a very common issue. People with like a very like a high sense of responsibility and passion, they struggle with when you work with lazy people, or when you work with people without like the similar mindset as you. So in here, a lot of stress happen.
Yes.
And I think what is very important for me to tell people is that first, never afraid to voice out your annoyance, because at the end of the day, the more you neglect, the more you hide your true feeling, the more you're gonna feel the burnout.
Deeper that
Yeah.
hole's gonna be. I always say tell my colleagues, you have the opportunity and the right to say no if you are overstressed or overloaded with work. Always say no. No is simple. 2 syllables, 1 syllable, 2 letters, gonna end any discussion. So my next question is something related. What things in our life help us heal or make trauma worse or make it less worse?
Healing is, I want to say, it's a very important process. And to go through healing, what someone needs, as we've been talking through the whole episode, is someone with a very good listening, and someone who give them an opportunity to talk about the inner struggle. And to really help a person to heal, you need to learn how to approach his inner struggle. And I think that's a very, very key skill, or a key point to like the healing process in the beginning, because you meet many people, they gave up on people because people didn't know how to approach them.
Yes.
So you might have someone in your close circle, they show up, in their face they look fine, but they're wearing a mask.
Yes.
You know, because not showing
betrayal.
Yeah.
Let's call it betrayal. Yeah. Or let's
No. I mean, like, not betrayal. I mean, I can sit in front of you telling you I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But inside me, I'm not fine.
I'm screaming.
Yeah. So in here, I think the reason maybe you said, or I said I'm fine, is that I just want to let things flow.
Yeah.
Because maybe there is always this mentality of, I don't want to annoy people with my thoughts. I don't want to look so negative.
Yes.
Or maybe who's going to understand me, or no one can understand. Like, this has happened a lot, and I see it within my eyes. So I think when you really care about someone, you need first to help them create this space and moment for them to really talk and express themselves, and they feel very comfortable to talk about their inner struggle without being judged, without being without also the expectation of a certain reaction. Because I think that's a very important thing in healing. So that comes, here comes the role of families, friends, mental health specialists. They all play a very big role. And maybe one of the challenges is when you see someone who come to you, they have a very negative circle, or they're not able to be, or they don't have the opportunity to talk or to be understood. So in here, as a psychologist, you might be his only way
to ventilate.
Yeah, to really release, to talk, to express themselves. And that's why I'm always very, I always so heavy on emotional intelligence and awareness, and trying to be very understandable for the person in front of you, because that's play a very important role in healing, because anyone can listen to you, but not anyone can respond to you with the way you want.
Yeah.
And especially on an emotional level, I think this is very important for me.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Let's talk about the importance of therapy. We know that psychological therapy is not well accepted in our society. When you say that you're going for psychological therapy, they say, oh yeah, he's crazy, he has something, he has issues. But let's talk about the importance of therapy in terms of trauma.
Yes, so I think, as you mentioned, maybe unfortunately we still struggle with certain stigma regarding mental health.
Yes.
And as life is now going more in a developmental way, things, people, I guess, in the last few years or like 10 years, they start to have a better awareness, and talking about mental health start to be improved and more open. I think it is quite important for people to be aware that mental health is as important as physical health. So when you go to a physical doctor for a headache or a pain in your stomach, it's similar with mental health. Another thing I want to say, just because you struggle on a mental level doesn't mean you have a mental illness. This is, I think, very important thing, because sometimes therapists can help you to really move on in your life in a positive way. So for me, that's why it's always important to help the people according to what they are really struggling with emotionally. So I don't always label the disorder first, the mental disorder first, as much as I start to see what's going on, try to make them feel understood. And I think it's very common, or it's very important in mental health, the therapeutic relationship between a therapist and the patient is to be positive, and it's built on trust and understanding and mutual connection. And based on that, and then you move on with the other professional procedure regarding disorders, or also sometimes it doesn't have to be a certain disorder. It's just, I sometimes look at it from more into self-development process. So this is, I guess, my approach, and hope many people try to be aware of it.
Well, Mr. Muhammad, I would like to keep talking about therapy and treatment, but we need to take a break and look into the upcoming report, and then we're going to continue talking about therapy and treatment. So please stay tuned.
Okay.
Welcome back, dear viewers, after this short break. And now we jump into myths and facts with Mr. Mohammed Muhanna. So myth number 1, time heals psychological trauma. Is it true or not?
It's not, but time can heal traumas only if it was approached well, I would say. Because, you know, trauma is still inside you. Yes, time can help, but still at some point you need to really cope and release it.
Well, sometimes it could be like a triggering bomb.
Exactly.
Okay.
It could be something that, in minimum example, you can see in divorce.
Yeah.
People, like, they've been like patient for so long,
and then suddenly divorced.
Yeah.
Okay. Myth number 2, strong people doesn't experience trauma. Is it myth or fact?
It's a myth, because they are human at the end. So as a human, we all experience certain feelings. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with a person with a strong person to experience trauma.
Okay. Myth number 3, forgetting is the best way to deal with trauma.
Myth.
Okay. Why?
Because to forget, you need to be able to cope with. And to cope with, you need to release that emotion. So once you live with that emotion in a better way, then that's going to help you, because memory is still inside you. You cannot erase memory, but you can learn how to not react to it in a very intense and negative way.
Okay. Myth number 4, children forget quickly and are not deeply affected by traumatic events. Myth or fact?
Myth, because the children they are in a very developmental period, and that period is very sensitive, where you try to learn everything and develop your skills. Therefore, they actually have they are more vulnerable for trauma's outcomes, or accumulated negative result in future.
Well, we are still traumatized or deeply scarred because of school. Isn't that right? We're all living the trauma. So myth number 5, people with trauma are overreacting.
I think it's depend. Maybe one thing about that question is because the word traumas sometimes became a trend.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Especially these days.
These days, yeah. And I think everyone who have a certain problem, they start to label it as traumas.
Trauma.
While I think it's more of who you are talking to and how they help you to understand your problem. Because your problem might be a problem, but not classified as traumas.
Exactly.
And here, as we said before, the difference in a person characteristics and how they observe themselves and how they see the world.
Okay, our final myth, talking about the trauma makes it worse. Talking about the trauma makes it worse.
Okay, so not really, because it's always depend who you talk to and how they make you feel. Because I understand it can be very emotionally intense, but that intensity is really required to help you to release your emotion. Maybe what make it worse is when you talk and cry and scream and the person in front of you is still not able to understand.
Or to have that kind of emotional intelligence to deal with that kind of
exactly. And I think this is very important to be aware of.
Well, that ends our segment of myth and facts. So let's take a break and then we end our episode for today. So please stay tuned. Well, welcome back, dear viewers, to our final minutes with Mr. Mohammed Muhanna. Thank you very much for joining us on DocTalk. I would like to keep talking about trauma, other psychological diseases and distresses. So once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure. And my dear viewers, also thank you for joining us. And until next time, enjoy your day.